Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
What is up, full-time family? It's time for the UFC 224 main card predictions. We're going to cover this whole main card, of course headlined by Amanda Nunes and Pennington, where Amanda Nunes is looking to defend her UFC bantamweight title at home. And in the co-main event, where UFC middleweight legend Jacare Souza, one of the best middleweights in the world for a long time, is going to be facing Gastelum, who's been on a Legends ass-kicking tour. Of course, we've got the highly touted Dern, who's also fighting at home against Amanda Cooper. Jacare Souza's fighting at home, Gastelum's not, but either way, it's still going to be, there's a lot of homers on this fight as usual. Whenever, you know, the UFC goes to Brazil, usually the cards are pretty stacked, even if it's a Fox Sports 1 card. Although I have to admit, that's not really the case for this card. I'm a guy that, you know, I'm an easy sell. I'm a guy that's usually, I'm happy with the Fox Sports 1 cards, the Fox cards. Usually I'm like, yo, these cards are good. And this main card is legit. But I got to admit, as far as stacked is concerned, UFC 224 is not the card you're looking for. You're looking at UFC 225, 226, 227. The rest of the year from here on out is about to get crazy. UFC 224 is going to be a card more for the hardcore fans. So with that being said, we've got those three fights. Of course, John Lineker is going to be facing Brian Boom Kelleher. John Lineker fighting at home. And then both Vitor Belfort and Lyoto Machida, two Brazilian legends, are going to be squaring off to open up the UFC 224 pay-per-view. That's also going to be a very fun fight. So with that being said, those are the fights that are going to be on the pay-per-view. I'm also going to do predictions on the Fight Pass and the Fox Sports 1 prelims. We're going to get into those after these. So before I discuss my predictions, I want to give a shout out to Nexus AT for the $25 donation. Thank you very much, good sir. Make sure you guys Google Nexus AT, because I don't know who they are, but I'm pretty sure they're a company. Since they rock with full-time family, make sure you leave them like a fucking good Yelp review or something. I don't know. Thank you very much for the $25 donation. And then also I got a $7.77 donation. I'm gonna have to pause it and get your name, but he said sevens for good luck. Hopefully it helps. Thank you very much, dog, for both of you guys for the 2 donations. That's gonna help a lot. You know what I'm saying? You guys know, some of you guys know what the deal. So that being said, thank you very much to Nexus AT and also Reese M. That was your name, Reese M, who sent the 777. Thank you very much. Hopefully it brings good luck. Hey, I hear you on that, dog. With that being said, let's start with the first fight on UFC 224 main card between two Brazilian legends in Lyoto Machida and Vitor Belfort, both still ranked in the top 15 of the middleweight division after a long storied career. Vitor Belfort's 41 years old, Lyoto Machida 39, so pretty even there. Both of these guys, as far as the UFC resumes are concerned, very even as well. Vitor Belfort's got 15 wins, Lyoto Machida's got 15 wins in the UFC. Lyoto Machida's got 8 losses, Vitor Belfort's got 9, so very similar there. Lyoto Machida's ranked 13, Vitor Belfort ranked 9. Vitor Belfort's currently on he's 1-3 in his last 4 fights, with his lone win being a controversial decision over Nate Marquardt that really Vitor Belfort lost, but he was also fighting in Brazil, so he got his hand raised at home, but that fight was really for Nate Marquardt. So really Vitor Belfort could be 0-4 in his last 4 fights. Lyoto Machida is also 1-3 though in his last 4 fights. He's 1-1 since coming off of a USADA suspension. He was KO'd by Derek Brunson in the first round, and then he won a close split decision over the athletic former Alabama football stud Eric Anders. I'm going to be going with Lyoto Machida in this fight, who has a more quality win of the two legends in recent history, as you know, his win over Eric Anders was a lot less controversial than Vitor Belfort's win over Nate Marquardt, which I thought Nate Marquardt actually won the fight. Some people felt Eric Anders beat Lyoto Machida, but I didn't think that was the case. I thought Lyoto Machida did fine in that fight. Now Eric Anders isn't going to have the skill of a Vitor Belfort, but what he doesn't have in the skill, he definitely made up for in athleticism in that fight, and Lyoto Machida was able to best Eric Anders. So I'm going with Lyoto Machida, who actually got that W more recently than Vitor Belfort, who hasn't been looking great, even in that fight versus Nate Marquardt where he got the W. So yeah, I got Lyoto Machida getting this win in this fight. We'll see what happens next for him. Maybe he can win this fight. Michael Bisping has talked about a retirement fight in at Liverpool, but he still doesn't have an opponent. Lyoto Machida, when he beat Eric Anderson, Michael Bisping, I'm here for you. So maybe if Machida can get a W here, he gets that Bisping retirement fight. because Belfort's a guy that Bisping said he's not going to give that opportunity. So that's just some other interesting things that could happen with this fight. With that being said, I got Machida. Next, we're moving to John Lineker versus Brian Kelleher, which is interesting matchmaking. Looks like John Lineker might be looking to ease his way back into title contention. And when I say ease, I'm just saying he hasn't been fighting ranked guys since losing to the current champion TJ Dillashaw. But Brian Boom Kelleher is still a very game opponent, a very unranked game opponent. But first, let's get into a little bit of the details. John Lineker's ranked number 6 right now in the UFC's bantamweight division. Almost 40 wins he's got almost 40 professional fights at just 27 years old. John Lineker's got 30 wins and 8 losses. He's only 27 years old. He's got 11 wins in the UFC and only 3 losses. So John Lineker's very experienced for his youth. Brian Kelleher is 19-8 as a pro. So he's got less experience there, and he's only 3-1 in the UFC. He's also older, so Brian Kelleher is also gonna be fighting away, as John Lineker's from Brazil, fighting in Brazil. So John Lineker's really got everything on his side. He's got this fight to lose, it looks like. And also, when I say it looks like John Lineker's easing his way back into title contention, I'm saying that because he's fighting another game but unranked opponent in Brian Kelleher, who's coming off the biggest win in his career. Brian Kelleher is over the former UFC champion Renan Barão. Now, John Lineker, he lost a pretty one-sided decision to the current UFC bantamweight TJ Dillashaw, and then he took about 10 months off to heal up a broken jaw, which he suffered in that fight. But then when he came back from fighting TJ Dillashaw, he fought Marlon Chito Vera, who was unranked at the time. And Lineker beat him by unanimous decision. So I thought when he took that fight, like, okay, I understand that, you're coming off of a broken jaw, kind of, I don't want to say a filler fight, but you know what I'm saying, fight an unranked guy to just get your shit back, make sure you got the same whereabouts, because after an injury like a broken jaw isn't something you want to just jump back in there with a fucking killer, in my opinion. And so John Lineker fought Marlon Chito Vera, who was unranked. He won the fight like he was supposed to. It was his fight to lose. Now he's hopping back in here with Brian Kelleher, who's getting a big opportunity here. Brian Kelleher has pulled off upsets in his career before. He's a guy that could get the job done, but I think I'm leaning toward Lineker, who's going to be not only fighting at home, he's the younger, more experienced fighter, and he's coming off of a, pretty solid win over Marlon Chito Vera, who actually was the only person to beat Brian Kelleher in the UFC. Even though that's not how MMA math works, that's just an interesting fact. So, yeah, I'm leaning toward John Lineker to get this W, but if Brian Kelleher can get this win, he'll establish himself as one of the best bantamweights in the world, that's for sure. Coming off a win over Renan Barão and then John Lineker at home, that would be huge for Brian Kelleher. So big opportunity for Brian Kelleher, but I'm going to pick John Lineker to get the W at home. Going next to Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Cooper. Mackenzie Dern is definitely a very highly touted prospect. She's undefeated right now. Very high-level jiu-jitsu skills, and among other things, why she's very popular. With that being said, though, I'm going with Mackenzie Dern to win this fight. She's only got 1 fight in the UFC. She's got less UFC experience. Mackenzie Dern, who's 6-0 with only 1 fight in the UFC. Amanda Cooper's 4-3, so she's only got 1 more pro fight, but she's got 4 fights in the UFC. She's 2-2. But with that being said, although Amanda Cooper has 4 fights in the UFC, both of her losses have came via submission, and Mackenzie Dern is really has some highly touted jiu-jitsu. She's known for her jiu-jitsu skills transitioning to MMA, but before MMA she was really known for her high-level jiu-jitsu. So for the fact that Amanda Cooper's both of her UFC losses have came via submission, Mackenzie Dern has that going for her on top of being at home. So I'm picking Mackenzie Dern to get the W. On top of that, Amanda Cooper's only wins in the UFC, her most notable win was over Angela Magana, who isn't very high level. I believe Angela Magana might have been on a 3 or 4 fight losing streak at that point, even though a lot of people wanted to see Angela Magana lose and know who she is. It's, she's not really known for her skills, if you know what I'm saying. So Amanda Cooper, she's lost 2 fights via submission. She's going against a really high level submission artist who's going to be fighting at home. So I'm picking Mackenzie Dern to get the W and remain undefeated in this fight. And then moving next to the co-main event, we got Kelvin Gastelum versus Jacare Souza. This is clearly one of the better fights on the card. Kelvin Gastelum, number 5 ranked middleweight in the world. Jacare, number 2 ranked middleweight in the world, coming off of a first-round knockout over Derek Brunson, which was big for Jacare, man. Now he's fighting in the co-main event at home versus Kelvin Gastelum. Jacare has 25 wins in his professional career, only 5 losses. 8 wins in the UFC, only 2 losses. So Jacare is the real deal, but I believe he's 39 years old, and he's going to be facing Kelvin Gastelum, who has been on a Legends ass-kicking tour. Kelvin Gastelum's only 26 years old, already with 18 pro fights, 12 fights in the UFC, and I'm going to read off the murderer's row that Kelvin Gastelum has already fought in the UFC at just 26 years old. But he's got 9 wins in the UFC, 3 losses in the UFC. He's got 15 wins overall and only 3 losses overall, which all came in the UFC, Kelvin Gastelum. But check this out, Kelvin Gastelum's only 26 years old, and he's been in the octagon with the murderer's row. At 26 years old, he's fought Uriah Hall, Rick Story, Jake Ellenberger, Tyron Woodley, Nate Marquardt, Neil Magny, moved up to middleweight, Johnny Hendricks, Tim Kennedy, Vitor Belfort, Chris Weidman, and most recently Michael Bisping. So, and he won all of those fights against everybody that was over the age of 35, which is just an interesting fact. Yeah, welterweight, he lost to Neil Magny and Tyron Woodley, but everyone else that I named, he pretty much beat. So, except for Chris Weidman, who was also under the age of 35 and also a middleweight grappler, fucking all-American wrestler. So that was a really tough matchup for Kelvin Gastelum. Super tough matchup for Kelvin Gastelum, who used to fight at 170 pounds, which is why at 185 he's kind of trying to find his home, because he could be fighting at 170 with maybe just a better nutritionist, or you know, whatever it may be. I think he even alluded to his discipline. He said, you know, he eats a lot of mama's cooking. She cooks real good. And so Kelvin Gastelum, he said that's what it is some of the times. But with that being said, if he was fighting at 170 or 175, there's been talk of the UFC adding a 175 division. He'd probably be good there. But at 185, when you see him against a guy like Weidman, if you put him against a wrestler at 185 who's going to have that size advantage, maybe even a Luke Rockhold, who's not a wrestler but still a very solid grappler at 185, those are kind of bad matchups for Kelvin Gastelum. But he's still one of the best welterweights or middleweights in the world, so he has success against a lot of these guys that aren't bad matchups, which is why he's been taking dudes out, all those legends that I named. So with that being said, I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum to get this W. He's won all of those fights, as I said, against everyone not over the age of 35, and Jacare is, even though that's not what all I'm going off of. I'm just saying Jacare fits that criteria, even though Jacare is a legitimate middleweight grappler, though. That's the thing about, you know, that's kind of a bad matchup for Kelvin Gastelum, because Jacare is a legitimate middleweight grappler. So if it gets into a situation to where Jacare actually gets Kelvin Gastelum down, it could be bad for Gastelum. But the thing is, as we saw in the Robert Whittaker fight, if you can avoid the takedown from Jacare, see, he's not the All-American wrestler, so he's going to have to figure out a way to get you down. If you cannot get taken down, you might be able to figure out a way to beat Jacare, as we saw in the Robert Whittaker fight. But we saw more recently in the Derek Brunson fight, Jacare still also got knockout power. So he's not just going to come in here only looking to, you know, take Kelvin Gastelum down. If he doesn't see an opening for the takedown, he's gonna be willing to throw some strikes. But Kelvin Gastelum's one of the best boxers, I think, in the middleweight division. So I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum unless Jacare can manage to get him down and submit him. But if Kelvin Gastelum does get taken down, he's gonna have to avoid the submission. But I mean, Jacare is going to be at home. He's coming off of a knockout win, so this is going to be a great fight. But I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum to really to get the W and continue his Legends ass-kicking tour en route to either fighting for the middleweight belt or fighting, you know, maybe going down and fighting at 170. Or if they make that new 175 division, if Kelvin Gastelum keeps it up, he can be in talks and fighting for like an inaugural 175 title. That could be in his future and stuff like that. So this is a really fight that I'm looking forward to, the co-main event. I would not be surprised if Jacare manages to get the W, even though I think Kelvin Gastelum will probably be the favorite and also come here and get the win. Robert Whittaker, I believe, after he staved off a few takedowns from Jacare, ended up getting the knockout. I can see this fight going like this, that for Kelvin Gastelum, but at the same time, Jacare is the fucking anaconda, the fucking alligator. He gets you down, dog. It could be bad news for Gastelum. So it's going to be a great fight, but I'm leaning toward Kelvin Gastelum. And then in the main event, Amanda Nunes, the current UFC bantamweight champion, arguably the greatest women's bantamweight of all time, fighting the #2 contender, Raquel Pennington. Amanda Nunes has 15 wins in her career, only 4 losses. Raquel Pennington, 9 wins and 6 losses. Amanda Nunes is 8-1 in the UFC, They both got, well, actually, Raquel Pennington 8 fights in the UFC, 6-2. So Raquel Pennington doesn't have a bad record in the UFC at all. Actually, she's got a great record in the UFC. Her overall record's the one that's a little more deceiving. With that being said, though, I'm going to be picking Amanda Nunes to successfully defend her title at home here, as you can see. Raquel Pennington is riding a 4-fight winning streak, though. She lost a split decision to Holly Holm about 3 years ago, then went on a 4-fight winning streak. Raquel Pennington is, one second, she's coming off of a win over Miesha Tate most recently, who's actually retired now. That was back at UFC 205. Since then, Raquel Pennington has been out. She's healing up from an injury which she suffered riding ATVs in the snow at her yearly hunting trip, she revealed, with MMA fighting, I believe. She was with her uncles and cousins at her yearly hunting trip, riding ATVs in the snow. I guess hit a turn, ATV rolled over. She said, I think her leg got caught in the roll cage or something. I don't know. I've never fucking rode an ATV. I'm not white. You guys get the point, though. It was an injury, a hunting injury, freak accident, and so this fight was actually supposed to happen at UFC 219, but that injury, after they had verbally agreed, postponed the fight. Now it's happening at UFC 224. With that being said, I'm going with Amanda Nunes, who's not coming off of an injury. She's been looking like, you know, the arguably, like I said earlier, the best women's bantamweight in UFC history with her destruction of Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey. She got 2 wins over Valentina Shevchenko, who could be the best pound-for-pound fighter, female fighter on the planet if she's able to capture a title at 125 pounds, because she'll have had success at 2 divisions. So Amanda Nunes has 2 wins over Valentina Shevchenko, destroyed Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey. I mean, she's been looking amazing as the champion. She's more experienced. She's been fighting in 5-round fights. She's been fighting higher level competition en route to becoming the champion. She's also fighting at home. Also, she didn't injure herself driving ATVs in the snow. Yeah, so I'm going to be picking Amanda Nunes, and you know, that's just something that's interesting to me, you know what I'm saying? But I completely get it. You know, these fighters are independent contractors. If you only got like 1 yearly hunting trip with the uncles, which I don't know much about that, but I'm just saying, you know, if you don't have a fight lined up, of course you're not going to miss your family trip. But I'm just thinking, like, as an athlete, like, if you're possibly the #1 contender about to be fighting for the title, I'd probably be, you know what I'm saying, trying to, hey man, I'm gonna have to keep, see, I'm not much of a ATV. I've never rode an ATV in the snow, and in the snow, that's another thing. Like, man, that seems pretty dangerous in my mind. Riding ATVs in the snow, you might be fighting for a title soon, but hey man, it is what it is. There's only 1 yearly hunting trip, so the fight was postponed, but it's here now, actually in 3 weeks, which is when these fights take place. We got a little bit of a UFC break from now until the main card, which I believe takes place first week of May, maybe May something, you know what I'm saying, 3 weeks from now, whenever this video was released. Check the upload date. With that being said, these are the main card predictions. Now we are about to get into the UFC, the rest of the predictions, the UFC Fight Pass prelims, as well as the UFC Fox Sports 1 prelims. I'm going to do that, though. Of course, those are going to be on Patreon. Click the link in the description, and those will be up. If you're not a patron, you can see those for free 5 days from now, from the release of this. So with that being said, yeah, if you want to see the full predictions, check that out. Click the link in the description. Everyone else, these were the UFC 224 main card predictions. Thanks for checking them out. I'm out. And as always, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell right next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. I'm out.
This is #1 bullshit.